In a previous existence, when the abductors sped by, I stepped in to rescue my sister Clara, but ended up being captured instead. 15 years later, my real parents located me, yet I never experienced any affection from them. The little boss who replaced me constantly set me up. Clara always walked alongside him, glaring at me and declaring, "My only brother is Mike." As she wished, I was eliminated by the adopted sibling. Then, I regained consciousness and found myself back on the day the kidnappers arrived. 6-year-old Clara was visibly scared. "Bro, help me." This time, I didn't charge in like before. I coolly replied, "Sis, see you in 15 years. Move it, grab that kid, don't let him escape." Panicked screams echoed everywhere. I suddenly realized I was sitting in a child's go-kart. 6-year-old Clara was running and crying. The scene felt eerily familiar. I understood I had gone back to the day of my abduction. Soon, a fierce elderly woman grabbed Clara and headed toward a van across the street. "Bro, help me." Clara was petrified. In my last life, I saw the old lady taking my sister away and immediately crashed the go-kart into her. She fell, and Clara broke free. I shouted, "Sis, get on." Clara quickly hopped onto the go-kart, but I was thrown off during a turn. The enraged old lady caught me. Clara, scared, didn't stop the go-kart and escaped unharmed, while I was kidnapped, leading to a tragic life. "Bro, help me." Clara's cries persisted. The old lady and her partner noticed me. No time to lose, I sped away. Watching the crying Clara from afar, I calmly said, "See you in 15 years, sis." After Clara was kidnapped, my parents were devastated, putting up missing person notices everywhere. But it was futile. Remembering the family that adopted me lived far from town, I wondered about Clara's fate. Though my parents were heartbroken now, they'd move on, just like they did with me. They later took in a son, lavishing him with love. Even after they found me, their real son, his position in the family remained secure. Strangely enough, when the adopted brother needed a kidney transplant, they begged me, their own son, to donate mine. So nothing is irreplaceable, not even parents or children. Time flew, and it had been nearly a year since Clara disappeared. I always told my parents how lonely I felt and how much I missed my sister. It brought my mom to tears every time. One day, she suggested to my dad, "Why don't we adopt another child?" I saw it coming, so when they shared their plan, I asked, "Can we adopt a sister? I want someone to watch over me." My parents felt uneasy, but didn't object. Since adopting a sister was my call, they took me to numerous orphanages. I wasn't satisfied with any girl I met. Then we visited a rundown, secluded orphanage. After finding no suitable candidates and preparing to leave, chubby Larry suggested adopting a boy. He mentioned one who was polite, smart, and well-behaved. Exhausted from the search, Mom agreed to meet him. When the boy appeared, I was stunned. It was Liam, the boy my parents adored in my past life. He was surprised too. His courteous smile shifted to shock. "What's happening?" he blurted out. We stared at each other. Mom asked Larry, "Is this the boy you mentioned?" Larry felt a bit awkward. "Oops, my bad. Liam might just be excited to meet you." Liam quickly regained his composure, becoming polite and cautious. "Hello, sir, ma'am, I'm sorry. Didn't mean to be rude." Mom nodded, curious, and asked some questions. Liam answered them all politely. After talking, it was clear my mom liked him. My dad seemed pleased too, but I had the final say as Alex. "Alex, can we bring this boy home?" Mom asked gently. "No." Liam's face turned pale. He looked at me, shocked and anxious, wanting to say something but held back. Mom was taken aback by my firmness. She tried to persuade me. "Having a brother isn't bad. You could build models and play games together." "No." Seeing my determination, Mom sighed. "Sorry, Larry. We can't adopt this boy." "It's okay, Judy." Larry nodded understandingly. But no. Just then, Liam suddenly broke down and yelled out, "Why is this happening, Mom? It's me, Liam. Dad, don't you recognize me?" His parents were startled and confused, looking at the boy in front of them, not understanding what was going on. Liam rushed over and held his mom tightly, tears streaming down his face, as if fearing she might disappear in the next second. "Mom, I've been waiting here for you and Dad for so long. Take me home. I don't want to stay here another day. Where's my sister? Why didn't she come?" His mom was freaked out by his strange words and pushed him away. "What's wrong with you? Are you out of your mind?" Liam paused and wiped his tears, explaining, "No, Mom, I'm perfectly clear-headed. Last life, you picked me up from here." Except for me, no one understood what he was talking about. His parents looked completely shocked. They probably didn't expect Larry to recommend someone mentally unstable. Larry looked embarrassed and uncomfortable, quickly calling someone to take Liam away. Liam panicked and lashed out. Kicking and screaming, Liam panicked and kicked hysterically. "No, I won't go. I want to go home with Mom and Dad. Get away, get away. I'm the rightful heir of a group that you guys faked." "Mom, I'm your real son." The two attendants lifted Liam up and took him away like he was a little chick. Even after a long while, you could still hear his heartbreaking screams from the yard. My mom, still shaken, grabbed my hand and walked out briskly. "Alex, let's go. We shouldn't stay here. This place is crazy. In my last life, I was the apple of my mom's eye. Now I'm just a lunatic in her eyes. I can't handle this complete change of attitude, let alone Liam. Words kill, you know?" It took me 3 whole months, but I finally found Emma at a welfare home in a neighboring city. When the director led me to her, she was in the middle of a fight with some little boys. Her face was scratched, one eye bruised, and her arm was bleeding. Though beaten up, her eyes were fierce and defiant like a little she-wolf, refusing to back down. My eyes instantly teared up. In my past life, whenever other kids bullied me in the orphanage, she always stood up for me, even if it meant 1 against 10, even if she got beaten badly. Even if the director punished her by not letting her eat for 3 days. She always comforted me with a careless tone. "Don't cry. I taught them a lesson for you, didn't I? But you got hurt so badly. Doesn't it hurt? This isn't a big deal. I'm a tough girl. Don't worry. I promise to protect you, and I will keep that promise." Her determined words still rang in my ears. "Emma, it's my turn to protect you this time." When I told my parents I wanted to bring Emma home, they didn't understand. They likely heard about her antics from other kids at the welfare home. But I didn't care and insisted on it. They had no choice and finally agreed. And that's how 8-year-old Emma came home with me, looking at the lavish living room, the luxurious crystal chandelier, and the plush Persian carpet. She seemed a bit uneasy and instinctively hid her tattered sleeves behind her back. "Why did you guys adopt me?" I led her to a room on the 2nd floor and drew open the heavy curtains. The floor-to-ceiling window was wide and bright. Sunlight filtered through a ginkgo tree outside, casting dappled patterns on the floor. I turned to her with a warm smile. "Because in this life, it's our turn to live well." She certainly didn't get it and looked at me, puzzled. "Who's that?" she asked, pointing at a photo on the bookshelf. It was a picture of Clara holding a doll on her 6th birthday last year. "No one," I replied, picking up the frame and tossing it into the trash without hesitation. I remember Clara once telling me coldly that she would only ever recognize Mike as her brother. Fine. In this life, I don't need her as a sister either. After a while, Emma looked up at me again. Those black and white eyes of hers carried a hint of uncertainty and stubbornness. "How long do you plan to keep me? 3 months or 6? I knew Emma had been given up for adoption twice before. One couple only wanted to foster her as a publicity stunt to boost their factory's brand awareness. With the media's enthusiastic coverage, they adopted Emma but then ignored her. She got beaten up by that couple's chubby son regularly. But to go to school and not be shamed as an orphan without parents, she endured it all at just 5 years old. Eventually, the beatings got worse, and the boy even pushed her down the stairs. When their factory went bankrupt, the couple decided to send Emma back to the orphanage. Before leaving, she couldn't take it anymore and got into a huge fight with the boy, leaving him bawling. From then on, Emma knew that to avoid getting bullied, fists were the only answer. About 6 months later, Emma was adopted again by a middle-aged couple who couldn't have kids. This time, she was somewhat lucky. Though they weren't well off, they treated her okay, at least not hurting her physically, and life wasn't too harsh daily. But the calm days didn't last. The wife got pregnant, and without much thought, the couple sent Emma back to the orphanage. After that, her hope for adoption died. She no longer hoped to be adopted and became increasingly aggressive, fighting often and being a loner. Until she met me at the orphanage, two isolated kids gradually became friends. I reflected on these memories and walked over to Emma. Not for 3 months, not for 6 months. You can stay in this home as long as you want. Until you decide to leave, I told her sincerely. She kept looking at me, her dark, sparkling eyes like stars in the night sky, feeling like ages before she finally spoke. Even though my parents were against bringing Emma back at first, the truth hurts rule quickly played out. No one knows better than me how smart Emma is. After just 3 piano lessons, she could play a whole pop song from memory. After 2 months of piano lessons, even the teacher wasn't a match for her. When it came to academics, by 3rd grade, she was already reading 5th grade math books and never scored less than 100 in Chinese and English. Smiles started spreading on my parents' faces, especially when they heard Emma's teachers singing her praises. They started putting as much effort into Emma's upbringing as they did mine, signing her up for classes she was interested in, and taking her to mingle with the upper crust, where she blended seamlessly with her wealthy young peers. Emma was stunningly beautiful and a star student. Her personality was a bit proud, but still, she was amazing. Some big shots even started plotting to marry their sons into my family through her. Dad was happy, but politely declined. After all, she was too young at the time. After that, my parents were even more serious about Emma's education. On top of that, they treated her just the same as their own son in daily life. Emma and I became as close as if we'd known each other forever. One day after school, a shadow suddenly darted onto the road, scaring driver Tom into swerving hard. Emma, quick on her feet, leaped over to shield me. With a loud crash, the car smashed into a roadside flower bed. Emma checked me over in a panic. "Are you okay?" I let out a sigh of relief, shaking my head. "I'm fine. Luckily, the car only had a cracked front, and the 3 of us are okay." Tom, pale with fear, angrily got out of the car, only to find a young boy standing there. "Larry the driver, it's me, Mike," the boy said, looking thrilled. "Hey kid, do you know how dangerous that was? Where are your parents?" Tom asked sternly. Mike looked crushed. Seeing Emma and me inside the car, he asked, "Alex, how are you two together?" Emma turned her head curiously, asking me, "Who's that? Do you know him?" I shrugged it off. "No idea." Mike's face went pale as he shook his head frantically. "No way. How could this happen? Where's Clara? Where did Clara go?" Tom turned to me too. "Young master, is this your friend?" "No idea who he is. Let's just go," I said quickly. With that, Tom got back in the car and started it up. Mike panicked, pounding on the car window. "Alex, you can't go. I need to see my mom with you. Stop. Let me in." Feeling annoyed, I muttered, "What a crazy day. Ran into a lunatic. Larry, tell the security not to let any crazies in when we get back." "Got it?" The car sped away, and Mike desperately chased after us, shouting from behind. When we got home, I told my mom about what happened earlier. "Gosh, that was close. Nearly got into an accident." "Mom, do you think that kid was really a lunatic? How did he even find our home?" Mom must have been shaken too, angrily calling the director. The other side was apologizing profusely, promising they'd send someone to find Mike, and they'd take him away soon. With that, the matter was resolved. Soon after, there were some issues with our company's business in Europe. Dad planned to head there immediately. He hinted to Mom that it might be a long stay, maybe 2 or even 3 years, implying he wouldn't be coming back home anytime soon due to business. Thinking about that persistent Mike from before, I suggested without hesitation, "Mom, how about we move over with Dad? Mom quickly agreed to the suggestion. Just 2 weeks later, our family flew to France together. Up in the sky, I quietly looked at the clouds below and waved a goodbye. Bye-bye, Clara. Mike, if fate allows, see you in 14 years. In those long, hard times, hang in there. Don't go getting into trouble or doing anything drastic. Grit your teeth. Live like ants in poverty with no dignity. 'Cause, that's how I made it through last time around. Believe me, someday we'll meet again. Once out of the terminal, the first thing I noticed was Larry holding a sign with my name. After all these years, he hadn't changed a bit. I waved enthusiastically at him, but he didn't even glance my way. I had to walk right up to him, grab the sign from him, and say with a smile, "Hey, what were you dreaming about? I've been calling you." "You're Alex." He looked shocked. "How'd you grow so tall and handsome?" "I've always been handsome." Larry nodded excitedly. His eyes even looked a bit watery. Yes, of course you have." Then he looked behind me. "You came back alone? Where's the chairman, ma'am?" "Of course you have." Then he glanced behind me. "You came back alone? Where's the chairman, ma'am, and Emma? They'll be back in a couple of days once Emma's last show is done. You know how my parents are. They'd never miss their baby girl's performance." Larry clearly agreed. "Yeah, every time the chairman calls, he can't stop talking about Emma. Always about how she performed in Vienna last month or how she's heading to the White House next. Sometimes I try to ask about you, but there's no room in the conversation. You'd think Emma was the biological child." I shook my head, amused. "Larry, you probably want to ask about Henry." Embarrassed to interrupt Dad. Henry's Larry's son. 10 years ago, he went to study in France and lived with us since then. Ugh, as if I don't care about that rascal. Whenever he calls, it's just to ask for money, Larry grumbled. On the way back, I noticed the city's CBD had huge posters of Emma everywhere. The genius pianist is returning to perform for the first time in 14 years. It's a pretty good publicity stunt. The old house we used to live in was sold a long time ago. 3 years ago, my dad bought a villa on a hill in the suburbs. The view is amazing, and it just finished getting renovated last year. This is my first time stepping into this house. The renovation looks great, almost like the dream house I've always wanted. It was totally worth it. Emma and I drew over 100 sketches before the renovation to design the most comfortable home for our parents when they come back. Larry started his usual rambling. "Alex, why do you guys like living up so high on a mountain? The view is nice, sure, but you young folks need to drive carefully. These mountain roads twist and turn, and there's a cliff below. Don't drive fast." Got it? While soaking in the bath, I heard the phone ringing outside. I was so exhausted from the flight that I didn't want to move, but the person on the other end was persistent, ringing for almost 10 minutes. I had to get up and answer. "What are you doing?" A gentle and soothing voice spoke in my ear. I wrapped myself in a bathrobe and leaned lazily on the sofa. "Missy, I'm taking a bath." "What's so urgent that you have to tell me now?" There was a brief silence. "I booked a flight for the day after tomorrow." Emma's voice sounded a bit weary, probably tired from all the practice recently. "All right, I'll make sure to welcome you home, Missy." A soft laugh came through the phone. "So, how was the performance?" "Not bad." "Congrats." "Congrats." "Okay, it's 11:30. Go to bed. You shouldn't stay up late." A light sigh drifted over my ear. "I know. Good night. Good night. Love ya." There was a moment of silence before the other side continued. "What did you just say?" "Good night." The next part? "Love ya." Another moment of silence, like even breathing was paused. I chuckled. "What, can't I say it? I heard your fans saying it at the airport last time." 3 seconds later, the dial tone buzzed on the phone. 2 days later, Larry picked up my parents from the airport, but Emma was nowhere to be seen. I heard she was picked up by the event organizers and might return in the evening. Oh well, I had specially asked the housekeeper to make a seafood feast, but it looks like she'll miss out. Just as we were about to eat, Ben the butler rushed over to say someone outside was asking for us. "For who?" I asked casually. "They said they're looking for the chairman and his wife." My parents exchanged puzzled glances. Looking for us? Who? Ben wore a conflicted expression, but finally spilled the beans. She says she's the chairman's daughter. After 16 years, I saw Clara again. Her clothes weren't great, but not too shabby either. At least they were clean. She was very dark and thin. Her rough skin and sallow complexion topped with simple hair. Her hands were covered in calluses, a bit like a lady cooking at a construction site. She trembled all over, her eyes fixed on my parents, lips quivering. Dad, Mom, is it really you? Mike came over, eyes red and spirit excited. Sis, it can't be wrong. Sis, it can't be wrong. They're your real parents. My mom walked over in a daze, unblinking, and said slowly, "Are you Clara?" Clara's tears finally fell as she broke down crying. "Mom, I'm Clara, I'm Clara." I kept reminding myself not to forget my real name so you'd recognize me in the future. "Mom, I finally found you." My mom cried her heart out too. And even my usually strong dad couldn't hold back his tears. He stumbled toward Clara and held her face. "You really are Clara, my daughter?" "Dad, Dad." The father and daughter embraced and cried. The room echoed with mournful cries. I wondered if I should muster up some tears too and create a tearful sibling reunion. But try as I might, not a single tear came out. Instead, I felt a strange sense of vindication. I recalled the day I was brought back in my previous life. Clara wore a luxury Chanel dress with an arrogant look, just like those high society ladies on TV. She stood at the top of the stairs, looking down on me with a cold aloofness that screamed, "Stay away!" "Dad, Mom, is he really Alex? You must be mistaken." Even after my dad confirmed it, annoyance lingered in Clara's eyes. Mike, wearing a simple blue shirt and dark pants, walked over, displeased. "Sis, is she really your brother?" Looking at Mike's pouting face, Clara couldn't help but smile as she messed with his hair like a puppy. "Silly, you'll always be my only brother." I clutched my hands, nervously watching the two of them joking around. Even though I was standing in the living room, I felt like I was sinking into the ground. Thinking of the haughty and proud Clara from back then and the plain-looking, sun-darkened lady in front of me now. She even looked 10 centimeters shorter than last time. I guess life's been hard without proper nutrition. "Are you Alex?" She finally noticed me after the cries ended. I smiled politely. "I am." She walked over and studied me from head to toe, her gaze making me uncomfortable. "Long time no see." Her tone was pretty cool. "Yeah, it's been ages. It had been 16 years since we last parted. Fate sure has a mysterious way of working." Only, I did delay our reunion by a year, since school was a priority. "Long time no see, sis." Clara nodded, then seemed to remember something. "Oh, by the way, Dad, Mom, let me introduce you to someone. This is my adopted brother, Mike." Wow, these two really have a special bond, the kind of sibling love. Of course, in their past life, they were the richest duo, but in this life, they've become the tough-time siblings duo. Without the tailored suits, Mike has lost his dashing and imposing look from the past. Now he's just a lanky guy with greasy hair and dark circles under his eyes, looking pretty sleazy. Even though his clothes are new, they look pretty cheap, like under $100 for the whole outfit. Even the security guard at our front door looks more dignified than him. When I shifted my gaze to him, Mike's face showed genuine embarrassment and awkwardness. There was also a glimpse of deep bitterness and hostility. Clearly, he hates me. Hates me intensely. And it's not hard to see why. I'm the reason his life turned out so miserable and poor. He almost got adopted by my parents after all. But whatever. His hate doesn't come close to how much I hated Clara on the day she kidnapped me to the hospital to be his kidney donor. Those days, lying on the hospital bed, I felt like my life was a living hell. I hated Clara, hated Mike, hated my mom and dad. I hated every single one of them. If I could have chosen, I would have wished us all to be wiped out together. But what good would that do? Absolutely none. After the surgery, my enemies recovered, and my family was all happy again. But I didn't heal well and got an infection, getting weaker and weaker. Eventually, my kidneys failed, and I was gone within a couple of years. Right? My parents clearly haven't realized that Mike was almost adopted by them as a kid. They politely thanked him for helping them find their daughter. They thanked him for taking care of Clara over the years, even inviting him to stay. No effort comes without a reason. Mike going to all this trouble to find Clara was all for this moment, wasn't it? Bet he spent these years looking for Clara. After reuniting, we still have to follow procedures. Even though it's almost confirmed Clara volunteered for a DNA test. Just in case my dad didn't object, that whole afternoon my mom sat on the couch holding Clara, talking through tears. She asked about her life over the years and reminisced about Clara's childhood like there was no end to the conversation. I caught bits and pieces. Clara's adoptive father died when she was 11, and her adoptive mom raised her alone. Since they were poor, she only went to school until 7th grade, then went to work. She's collected trash, worked in factories, delivered packages, and cooked on construction sites. Quite a story. No idea how Mike found her. Hearing her daughter didn't finish middle school, Mom got teary-eyed. My dad just sat there, silent. As everyone sat in silence, we heard a noise from outside, like a vehicle pulling in. Soon, footsteps echoed in the living room. A graceful girl pushing a simple suitcase walked in. "Hey, Dad. Mom? Why are you all sitting here?" Megan took off her beret, revealing her stunning face in the light. She curiously looked at us on the couch. "The daughter is back." Mom suddenly stood up, seeming a bit flustered. Dad looked a little rattled, too. "Have you eaten? Are you hungry? Should we ask Mrs. Lee to make you a snack?" Mom unconsciously stepped away from Clara and headed towards Emma, naturally showing concern. "Mom, I already ate." Emma smiled at her. Who are these two? She was obviously asking about Clara and Mike. Mom looked nervous, unsure how to answer, and glanced at Dad. Dad hesitated, glanced at Clara, then at Mike. They're kids from a distant relative's family. Mom seemed relieved but guilty after hearing this. Awkwardly, she added, Yes, kids from distant relatives." I sat casually in the armchair, watching as Clara's already rough and yellowed face slowly turned pale. Emma nodded to the two on the couch as a greeting. Clara stayed expressionless, not responding. Mike stared at Emma for a while, lost in thought. "Mom, I'm going to take a shower upstairs." Hearing this, Mom quickly responded, Okay, honey, I'll go run your bath. You must be exhausted these days." "There's no need. You and Dad should chat with the guests for a bit." Emma nonchalantly directed me, "Alex, grab my luggage later." Why me? She gave me a look I understood to mean figure it out. No reason. With Emma upstairs, the living room felt even quieter. Dad let out a long sigh and guiltily explained, "Sorry, Clara. Emma has a really important performance next week." I didn't want to upset her, so I had no choice. But once it's over, I promise I'll tell her the truth. Right, Clara, you won't be mad at us, will you? Mom seemed to realize her earlier behavior was wrong and cautiously watched Clara. But even if it happened again, she'd probably do the same thing. Parents, after all, prefer children who make them proud. Don't they? I've certainly learned that the hard way in my past life. Clara's clenched fists slowly relaxed. Looking at Mom, the deep darkness in her eyes cleared. "Of course not, Mom. I understand." Hearing this, Mom seemed relieved. That's good. I silently mocked her innocence. Being robbed of your parents' love for 16 whole years by a stranger isn't something you just get over. Just like me in my past life. And Clara in this life. 30 years on the East Bank, 30 years on the West. My dear sister, have you finally felt the heart-wrenching, helpless feeling yet? Hating someone, but trying your best to please them just to not disappoint your folks. Even though they're your biological parents and siblings, you never quite feel like you're part of them. At the dining table, they're a family of 4, and you're just a random stranger. When guests at a party ask about you, your parents get all shifty and vague. Then there comes the handsome adopted son. confidently stepping in to cover for them. Oh, he's the son of our nanny looking for work in the city. How funny is that? I'm the biological child, but I'm introduced as the nanny's kid, looking for work. Yeah, right. And nobody steps in to explain this nonsense. Not even my biological parents or sister. They all just go along with the lie. If it weren't for my childhood memories, I might actually believe I'm the nanny's kid. The next morning, I walked downstairs and saw Emma at the table with a glass of milk. Morning, sis. She choked a bit with a hint of a blush on her face. What did you just call me? I couldn't help but chuckle. Are you aging too fast, sis? Is your hearing going bad? Emma looked me over, staying calm. Who's the one always saying weird things? I shrugged. Is calling you sister that weird? Just when Emma was about to reply, Clara and Mike came down the stairs. Morning. He greeted both politely. Clara nodded. Morning. But Mike gave Emma a friendly smile. Morning. Emma, always perceptive, quickly noticed the unabashed hostility directed at her from the table. She felt a bit baffled. I cleared my throat and threw in a line of French. Let me tell you something. Don't be too surprised. The three of them all turned to me. Clara and Mike don't know French. At least they didn't in the past life. Judging by their looks this time, they probably still don't. Then I said casually, She's my long-lost sister, reunited with Mom and Dad yesterday afternoon. Emma looked surprised and instinctively replied in French. Why didn't you tell me the truth last night? You have a performance coming up. They didn't want it to divert your focus from practicing. She mused. That makes sense. What are you two talking about? Mike suddenly rudely cut in. We were talking about how great this bread tastes. So why can't you say that in Chinese? Did this guy forget last time when he and Clara took advantage of my poor English to mock my table manners? If I hadn't secretly recorded it on my phone and used a translation app, I'd probably never know how much animosity this adopted son has towards me. Such a double standard. I can speak Chinese or French whenever I want. What's it got to do with you? Mike's face turned from red to pale. He must be subconsciously slipping back into his original role from before. Eating at the same table and behaving like this? Don't you think it's rude? Clara's expression was icy. Another case of double standards. What a joke. So having a grumpy face is polite. Huh? This is my house, and I can have any expression I want. Clara straightened up, her gaze sharp overnight. Her attitude and presence had totally shifted from yesterday. Looks like we're gonna have some sibling rivalry. Before, I was cautious and never dared to go head-to-head with her, until she dragged me to the hospital to forcibly remove my kidney for Mike. Then we broke all ties. But what did it matter? She didn't even blink when ordering the doctor to make the cut. Good, this time let's settle our scores. This is my house too, and I can say whatever I want. Just too bad you can't understand. If it wasn't for you ditching me and running off to save your own skin, would I have ended up here? Clara suddenly slapped the table, glaring at me fiercely. She finally said what was on her mind. You know how miserable I've been all these years. Where were you when the traffickers beat me half to death? Where were you when I fed pigs and chickens in the countryside? When I quit school at 12 to scavenge through trash in the streets? Where were you? When I slept in a bridge hole? Where were you? When a nail went through my foot at a construction site? Where were you? Clara ended up yelling, her emotions all over the place, spitting as she shouted. Breakfast is officially over. Even the table itself is now unusable, covered in spit. I wiped the spit off my wrist with a napkin, unimpressed. Clara was further agitated by my gesture. She glared at me with bloodshot eyes. I just gave a cold smile, like I'm the only one who's been beaten by traffickers, who hasn't fed pigs, who hasn't scavenged through trash or slept in a cold bridge hole. Like I'm the only one who's been beaten by traffickers, who hasn't fed pigs, who hasn't scavenged through trash or slept in a bridge hole. I was bounced around till I ended up in an orphanage, but my days there were even darker. Beaten with whips by the staff. Did I ever complain? What's going on? What are y'all arguing about? Father and Mother walked in from outside, puzzled glances aimed at us. Nothing. Emma reacted first. We're just chatting. Mother gave a nervous look to the other side. Clara, you didn't say anything you shouldn't have, right in the heat of the moment? Clara looked tense. Mom, who exactly is your real daughter? Huh? Can't I even speak the truth? You! Mother, lost for words, just stood there. After 3 seconds, she hurriedly explained to Emma. Emma, I'm sorry. I didn't intentionally keep things from you yesterday. Please don't be mad at Mom. In my heart, you'll always be the daughter I love the most. Even though I knew my mom always doted on Emma, hearing her say that right in front of her own daughter was surprisingly satisfying. Clara looked at her mom, completely shocked. Her expression slowly changed from disbelief to disappointment, then despair, and finally utter silence. Meanwhile, Emma felt super awkward. Mom, I'm fine. You? She didn't even know what to say. Inside, she was probably thinking, go check on your real daughter? Emma quickly made an excuse to practice piano and left the scene in a hurry. After she left, Clara calmly spoke up. Mom, Dad, when are you planning to make her leave? Her mother was momentarily confused. Make who leave? I'm your real daughter. Now that I'm back, you should get rid of any unnecessary people, right? You mean make Emma leave our home? Exactly, Clara said plainly. Absolutely not, both parents said in unison. Her mom looked at Clara like she was talking nonsense. How has Emma ever wronged you to make you want her out on your second day back home? Clara sneered. Mom, I'm your birth daughter. I've suffered and been through hell all these years without any of your care and love. Now that I'm finally back, I still have to put up with this fake daughter. Have you thought about me? Her mother's eyebrows furrowed, and her face turned unhappy. We know you've had a tough time out there, and we'll make it up to you. But it's not Emma's fault. You can't blame her for it. Clara was speechless for a moment. It was clear she was really disappointed in her mom. Dad, do you think so too? Her dad looked at his real daughter, a hint of guilt in his eyes, but his tone was firm. Clara, your mom is right. You've been through a lot and we do owe you. We hope to make it up to you, but Emma isn't to blame. We won't ask Emma to leave, and we hope you two can get along. Make it up to me? Clara let out a cold laugh, like she'd heard the biggest joke. How do you plan to make it up to me? With money? Don't forget that the money was always mine. The entire A group is mine because I'm your real daughter. How many times do I have to say that? If you want to make it up to me, unless you can turn back time, go back 16 years, can you? Can you? Clara's hysterical screams echoed in the living room. In her fury, she flipped the dining table, sending cups and plates crashing to the floor. She did what I always wanted to do in my past life. She said what I wanted to say. Yeah, parents always talk about making up for things. But can they really make up for lost time? It's the carefree childhood and precious youth that we missed out on. But in my past life, when my parents asked me to get along with Mike, Clara was right. They're making snide comments. You'll never take Mike's place. He'll always be my only brother. If it wasn't for our blood relationship, I'd have been kicked out long ago. In the end, she forced me to give Mike a kidney. I asked her why she'd do this to me. After all, I was his real younger brother. Because you're just unlucky, you have no luck to live with us, she replied. It's easy to talk big unless you're in someone else's shoes. Clara, it's your own bad luck you don't have the blessing to stay in this family. After that day, a clear rift grew between Clara and her parents. Both sides seemed to avoid each other, clearly not willing to compromise. One side insisted on kicking Emma out. The other side was absolutely against it. From my view, Clara was way too confident. So what if she's the real daughter? Emma brought endless glory to her parents, making them look like star parents, admired and respected by many. How could they give up on their well-nurtured, famous pianist foster daughter for a middle school dropout who collected garbage in the past? They're not stupid. 2 days later, Dad approached Clara in the living room, suggesting they hire some tutors to help her catch up before sending her to study abroad. Clara couldn't believe her ears. You're trying to kick me out? Of course not. Dad couldn't understand why she was twisting his words. Clara, before, you didn't have the chance to study. It's different now. You're young, and you should learn more, see more of the world to broaden your perspective. Why should I change my perspective? I don't need to study abroad. In a couple of days, I can start working at the company with you. You just need to teach me how to run and manage a group. Her father's silence showed he was shocked by her words. I kindly reminded her from the side. Sis, Dad's health isn't great these past 2 years, so I'm mainly in charge of the group's decisions now. Clara's face instantly changed, and she shot up from her seat. Why? Why what? Alex, how much are you planning to take from me? I couldn't help but chuckle. When did a group become yours? I'm the eldest daughter, so it's originally mine. Clara argued loudly like a firecracker. So what if you're the eldest? A group belongs to Dad, and it's not your turn yet to say it's yours. I said it's mine, so it is. You guys owe it to me. You must compensate me, she snapped delusionally. Enough was enough, and Dad finally lost his temper. How do you expect to manage the company? Are you daydreaming? If you want to join a group, at least graduate from Stanford Business School like your brother did. Do you have that capability? Middle school dropout? By the time you get into Stanford, that opportunity will be gone. When Mom and Mike heard the commotion, they rushed over. The living room fell silent. Clara stared at her father, her eyes filled with resentment and humiliation. She glared at him, almost bursting with fury. I'm your real daughter. You lost me, and now you're rejecting me. So what if I'm just a cook? I'm your real daughter, and the one playing the piano is the one you adopted from the orphanage. Are you seriously losing it? Ignoring your biological daughter and kissing up to the pianist every day? I think you both have lost your minds. A loud slap landed on Clara's face. Her father trembled with anger. Get out. Just get out. It was a chaotic day. Clara, of course, didn't leave. She couldn't bring herself to. The father-daughter relationship hit rock bottom. Even her mother was colder towards Clara since she was also insulted. Plus, with Emma's first performance in the country coming up, she had less attention for her biological daughter. On Friday afternoon, her parents were dressed up early, ready to hit the concert hall. Emma had reserved front row seats for us. She had invited Clara and Mike to the performance out of courtesy a couple of days ago. But till 4 p.m., Clara stayed locked in her room. Mike, however, dressed to the nines, followed us to the car. The performance was, unsurprisingly, a hit. It was a full house. After thunderous applause, we went backstage to see Emma, who was swarmed by reporters. Once they found out who we were, they started snapping pictures and bombarding us with questions. Luckily, my parents were pros at handling such situations, posing calmly for the cameras. First, Mike was a bit awkward, but he quickly adapted. After all, in his past life as the heir to Group A, he was used to cameras. Most reporters knew my parents. Some even knew me, but no one recognized Mike. Some were quick to guess his relationship with Emma, subtly probing if he was her boyfriend. Mike just smiled and dodged the questions skillfully. A well-known TV station wanted my parents for an interview show. They wanted to explore how a genius pianist is nurtured from the parents' perspective. So they weren't there at the moment no one was to slap Mike. I just quietly watched him from the sidelines. The next day, Emma's relationship status buzzed on social media. Mike's not-so-striking face was on screen. Fans couldn't believe it but couldn't explain why he was backstage with Emma's family. Emma's Facebook was flooded. Woo-woo, does the goddess have bad taste? She should date me. I stayed up all night wondering where I went wrong. Mike became noticeably more attentive to Emma after that day. He'd join her for breakfast every morning and quietly take milk from the nanny to her room at night. They'd discuss piano and violin together. In his past life, Mike played the violin. He wasn't exceptionally talented and didn't practice much, but he was good enough to impress. Emma had also played a bit as a kid, so Mike would often humbly ask for her guidance with the violin. While he remained unembarrassed, I felt secondhand embarrassment for him. That night, Mike came upstairs with milk. Without a word, I drank it all. His face was grim. It wasn't for you. I know, I did it to warn you. Don't waste your time. Emma's out of your league. He chuckled at my comment, direct and taunting. And how do you know she's out of my league? She's just a woman. Where does he get this confidence from? Since he didn't believe it, we decided to test it out. While he watched, I knocked on Emma's door, leaving it ajar on purpose. She had just showered, wearing a robe, her damp curly hair dripping. "What's up?" I suddenly didn't know what to say. Curly hair dripping. "What's up?" Standing there, dumbfounded for a moment. "Want me to dry your hair for you?" She gave me a weird look. "You came here just to dry my hair?" "Fine, forget it." I shrugged. "Wait." She stopped me, her eyes moving slightly. "The hairdryer is in the bathroom." "Bathroom?" "Forget it. I'll dry it for you first. Sit down." I patted the sofa. Emma glanced at me oddly, a certain emotion on her face, but she sat obediently. To clear my mind, I randomly rubbed her head with the towel. "Alex, are you doing this on purpose?" Emma smacked my hands angrily. I grasped her soft wrist. Our eyes met. "How did I upset you?" Her hands caught in mine. Her eyes turned fierce like a little wolf, showing signs of getting annoyed. I hadn't seen this side of Emma for a while. In our past life, it was frequent. Remembering her fighting with those rowdy kids at the orphanage or how passionate she looked while playing the piano, it was hard to believe they were the same person. "You didn't upset me, but I'm gonna upset you," I said, and immediately kissed her. Emma seemed taken aback, but after a brief pause, she responded. The two of us kissed passionately on the sofa. As we paused to catch our breaths, she looked at me seriously. "Are you sure you want to do this?" I seemed to be addicted to her lips, nodding quickly. "Yes, I'm sure." Emma chuckled lightly, playfully. "I was just gonna ask why your mouth tastes like milk." I heard footsteps outside the door, slowly fading away. After I claimed Emma's territory in front of Mike, he backed off a bit. I thought he had given up, but he was just waiting to play his trump card later. Weekend. I had to fly to Germany for business. My parents were scheduled to tape a follow-up interview show on those days. At home, it was only Emma, Clara, and Mike. I took a 2 p.m. flight home, arriving around 1 a.m. Walking past the third floor, I noticed Emma's bedroom door was open. As soon as I stepped inside, someone flipped on the light. Mike was lying shirtless on the bed, giving me a mocking grin. Emma was quietly asleep next to him. "You're back. We've been waiting for you." Hearing him say "we," I noticed Clara on the couch. Fury surged through my head, and I barely stopped myself from kicking Mike. "What did you do?" Clara looked at me nonchalantly and tossed an iPad onto the coffee table. I picked it up and opened the gallery. It was full of different photos of Mike and Emma on the bed, in the car, and in the bathroom. The angles were sneakily shot, making it look like Emma was either asleep or enjoying herself. I dropped the iPad and walked to the bed, softly calling Emma. No response. I couldn't believe Clara and Mike had stooped so low. "What do you want?" "Emma's career plus half of a group's rights. $2 billion doesn't seem like too much," Mike said casually. I turned to Clara. "Is it about money for you too?" She looked me in the eye. "What else?" "I can't decide on this without calling Dad first." I quickly briefed the situation over the phone. "My parents are staying at a 5-star hotel about 40 minutes away, near the TV station." They arrived quickly. Mom rushed to the bed to call Emma, who still didn't move. When Mom saw Mike in nothing but a bathrobe, she almost passed out from anger. Before anyone could react, she slapped Mike twice. "What did you do to Emma? How did you get these photos?" Mike looked at her in disbelief, stunned by what just happened. "Mom, did you hit me? You good for nothing. Who gave you the nerve to mess with my daughter?" Mike's face fell. "Did you just insult me?" "No manners, I did. You're not even worthy to lick my daughter's shoes." Your daughter. She's not your daughter. Clara and I are your real kids. Your daughter. She's not your daughter. Clara and I are your real kids, you fool." Mike shouted. Are you nuts? Mom shot back at him, exasperated. Yeah, I've lost my mind. If you don't cough up $2 billion in 3 days, every video and photo will go public. Mom tried to slap Clara, but was pushed back. I walked over and stopped her. Mom, Dad, you go. I'll deal with them. Dad gave me a long look, then dragged my furious mom out. I opened the iPad, scrolling through the photos calmly. Not even $20, let alone $2 billion, I said. Mike sneered. Alex, I want to see how far your stubbornness goes. Mike, in our past life, you might have had a chance with Emma. But now, don't you have any self-awareness? Mike's eyes widened as if he'd seen a ghost. Staring at me, he stammered, Alex, you were reborn too, right? I smirked coolly, not responding. Clara looked between us, thinking she misheard. No wonder you ended up with Emma back then. Mike glared, consumed with hate. At the orphanage, you made sure Mom and Dad wouldn't adopt me, right? I shook my head. Not just that. I convinced Mom to move us to Germany, told Dad to sell the old house, and suggested he transfer Larry to a branch up north. I wanted to sever your ties to our family completely. You bastard! Mike snapped, throwing a punch, but I caught his wrist firmly. Thanks for the compliment. I dealt with Clara. Why not you? Clara seemed to realize something, her expression darkening. Alex, what do you mean? But Mike already knew. It was you who set her up to be taken by traffickers. Wrong? I said. I just chose self-preservation. Alex, Clara's face twisted with rage. She lunged at me, hands around my neck, eyes flaming red. I suspected it was you all along. You stood by and let it happen. And I've lived worse than a dog because of you. I pried her hands off and pushed her back. You deserved it because you're a beast. I saved you once, and how did you repay me? You're heartless. Do you know how happy I am when I hear about your pathetic life? I want to throw a party. Clara, karma's hitting you now. You think I'm happy? This life, you're so short you can't even stand taller than a pumpkin. Mike, you've been looking for her all these years. Huh? And yet it was all for nothing. This lifetime's Clara isn't going anywhere anyway. She's better off cooking on a construction site. Mike gritted his teeth in frustration. So what? At least I won this last time. I won in the previous life. Yeah, you did, but that was in another lifetime. Right now, you're broke with nothing to your name. Hope you can afford a kidney transplant when your kidney disease comes back. Mike burst into a manic laugh. Why would I be broke? I'm about to get $2 billion, aren't I? You don't want to see Emma's career ruined, do you? Or do you want to watch a group go bankrupt? I didn't argue, just pulled out the surveillance of Emma's room and the garage downstairs on my phone. In the footage, Mike and Clara were helping a barely conscious Emma into the car, snapping photos frantically. After a while, they carried her into the elevator, took her to a room on the 3rd floor, and repeated the setup. Coming back and seeing these two greedy and foolish individuals again, I remembered your request. $2 billion, right? Sorry, I don't have $2 billion, but I'll make sure the judge gives you 20 years instead. Though realistically, not likely. You didn't kill anyone or burn anything. 3 to 5 years max and you'll be out. But I'll make sure you two leave here like stray dogs. Not a penny to your name. And I'll make sure you get a taste of jail food as well. Mike and Clara didn't see the tables turning so fast. Their faces were priceless. As if they were about to cry from their own stupidity. Why's this happening? Why? Mike looked up at me, eyes full of spite. You're pushing me, Alex. We can both die together. I can't live long without money anyway. He lunged at me, punching me in the face. I barely had time to react before he hit me again. Why? Alex, it's all because of you. I'm in this mess. Do you know how long I searched for Clara? 14 years. 14 whole years. I endured so much only to end up like this. Fine, I won't live anymore. Let's all just go down together. Alex, you're going down with me. Mike went mad, throwing punch after punch. Then he dragged me towards the balcony. Mike! Clara called out to him. Mike, crazed, pulled me towards the open balcony. The railing was low, barely waist high. A moment's carelessness and we'd both fall over. Mike was totally unhinged. I clung tightly to the railing, trying to keep my body steady. To avoid dying with him, I had to compromise. Mike, there's $5 million in my room. Take it and go, but promise me you'll never come back. The madness in his movement stopped abruptly. What did you say? If you promise never to return, I'll choose not to call the cops. The $5 million is yours. It'll cover future surgeries just fine. Clara heard it too. She seemed almost insulted by the offer. $5 million? Are you out of your mind? Greed knows no bounds. That's all the cash I have. Take it or leave it, up to you. Mike slowly calmed down. How do I know you'll keep your word? What if you call the cops the moment we leave? I can give you the money in front of my parents. As long as you never return, I won't release the surveillance footage. As for calling the police, Clara is still my parents' child. They're disappointed in her, but wouldn't go that far. Perhaps seeing the logic, Mike released me. All right, as you say. Clara and Mike dragged 2 hefty bags of cash down to the parking garage. Like I said, my parents were too weary to say goodbye to her. Mike opted for his favorite car, a Lamborghini. These cars were ordered abroad by Emma and me, shipped back not long ago. After so many years, Mike was elated to sit in his favorite car again. Just as Clara was about to load the bags into the car, Mike changed his mind. Wait, let's take this Porsche instead. With a smug grin, he looked at me. I had to hand over a different set of keys. As the car roared to life, Mike smiled knowingly. Alex will take your $5 million, but who knows how long that will last, right? Feigning shock, I stared at him. A storm of frustration, anger, and regret welled up in my eyes. But all I could do was glare helplessly. With a triumphant grin, Mike sped away. I composed myself and took the elevator back to the 3rd floor, overlooking the winding hillside road. Larry's words echoed in my ear. Funny, Master Alex, why do you prefer living high up in the mountains? Yeah, the view's great, but you young folks ought to be careful driving. No joke here, the road's right next to a sheer cliff. Larry wasn't wrong. I don't like living high up here at all. Too many mosquitoes, too humid. But above all, that winding road really is terrifying. The drop beside it even more so. I've often thought, what if the car suddenly lost control on that road? It'd be curtains for sure. Yet somehow I was dead set on buying a house here. Even snuck back to the country to do it. After all, I searched for a long time to find a place that fits my vision. Clara, Mike, I've put a lot of thought into finding this prime location for you. Lost in thought. Under the heavy night sky, the car with its lights on started to swerve. I could almost hear a piercing scream cut through the night sky. In less than 2 seconds, there was a loud crash. The car broke through the guardrail and plunged straight down the cliff. Better sell the house next month. I don't want to stay there another day. By the time the police notified us to get to the hospital, Mike was already gone. Clara was in the ER. That was a bit of a shock to me. I didn't think her luck was that strong. We stayed at the hospital all day and night. I was worried since my parents were getting older and might not hold up. So I had the driver take them home to rest, then come back at night to relieve me. Turns out that was a smart decision. Not long after they left, the doctor told me Clara was awake. But the chances weren't great, and it was best to let my folks come and say goodbye. Are you kidding? No way. I walked into the ward. Clara was badly injured. I heard a tree branch went through the windshield and straight through her body and the passenger seat. What a resilient branch. I tried not to look below her neck. Didn't want to leave a mental scar on myself. Say what you want, I'll pass it on to our parents, but it'd be best to avoid sensitive subjects like you thinking I tampered with the car or whatever. I want to see Mom and Dad. Clara managed a few weak words. Larry drove them home. They won't be back for a while. A look of despair flitted across Clara's face. It was the kind of despair right before the end. Her face suddenly turned ashen. Slowly, she spoke again. Alex, This lifetime you must feel proud, right? What do you mean? I looked at her suspiciously. You remembered things from your past life? Despite how weak Clara was, her eyes had that arrogance I was familiar with, that self-important vibe pushing people away. That was definitely the Clara from the past life. Last night's crash? That was definitely the Clara from the past life. Last night's crash was it, you? Clara spoke as blood trickled from her mouth. Looks like she not only regained past memories, but also got a bit smarter this round. Good thing there weren't cameras in the room, so I might as well level with you. Yep, trading our lives. Emma's and mine from the last life. For yours and Mike's, this life. Seems fair, right? I don't have many virtues, but holding grudges is one of them. Clara stared at me, her lips trembling. Hate me? Go ahead. My big grudge is finally avenged. I'm thrilled. When were you reborn? I swear I never spoke so seriously in this life. The day with the traffickers, remember? When that old lady nabbed you, I even waved bye-bye. I told you, see you in 15 years, but too far away, might not have heard. Clara coughed violently, blood spilling. I shook my head, continued my rant, and I even knew where you were sold as a kid. When you told them last time, I guessed it. Clara, actually, all those years I knew where you were, just didn't want to bring you back. 'Cause I told you 15 years, couldn't advance it. Clara coughed harder, the blood just kept coming. Her trembling finger pointed at me, consciousness fading. You're ruthless. Am I? Of course. Can't get revenge any other way. In the last life, when I found out you hit Emma, I vowed to become a demon to take your lives. Yours and Mike's. At Clara's burial, Mom sobbed uncontrollably, and Dad seemed to age overnight. Who'd imagine a newly reunited daughter ending like this? It's all right. It's temporary. In time, when the sadness fades, they'll go back to peaceful lives. Last life, it was me. This life, it was Clara. Doesn't affect them much. Folks were fair, not playing favorites. Though I hated them a bit, life's just like that. At least this life they got Emma. The one I love gets to grow up safe and sound. No turmoil like that last life, and became the brightest star around. For that, I'm willing to make peace. Emma spent a few days in the hospital thanks to hallucinogens and sedatives from Mike and Clara. Sunday, the driver brought her home. The house was quiet, 7th day since Clara passed. Parents went to the temple, scrolling my phone, thinking when to list the house, this month or next. How are you doing? Emma came over, looking a bit worried. I nodded. She paused. A moment later, she hugged me gently, with a soft tone. Cry if you need to, really cry. No need to hold back. I put down my phone, feeling baffled. Why would I cry? Emma let go, gave me a curious glance. You sure you're okay? My relationship with Clara isn't as good as you might think. We haven't seen each other in years. We're like strangers now. Especially considering what she and Mike did to you. Emma seemed to remember something. Those photos. No worries, I've already taken care of it. Just the thought of her and Mike lying in the same bed makes me want to kick Mike's gravestone. How could you be so caught off guard by others? Even at home, you should be on alert. She was speechless. Do you hear what you're saying? Luckily, nothing serious happened, or I'd be sick to my stomach. Auntie's off today, so no one's cooking at home. Let's go out and buy some groceries to cook ourselves. Now? Yeah, I'll call a ride online. She seemed puzzled. Why not drive out? I paused my fingers on the screen for a moment. Don't use the car at home for a while. I'll have someone look at it in a few days. Why? Such a curious cat. I rubbed her forehead. No reason, just a secret.